Today's lesson, we are going to talk about how to write main idea 1 paragraph for your History of Invention research project. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to talk about what are the different parts of this very first paragraph. The first thing is going to be to state your main idea. This paragraph is going to be all about what your technology was like in the past. So we need to make sure that we explain that in our very first sentence. So over here, I have created a paragraph or a sentence indenting the beginning of my paragraph about what technology was like in the past. And remember, I chose to research calendars. So my sentence says, calendars have seen many changes over the years, but some things aren't that different. They all had weeks, but some weeks were 4 days long and others were 8 days long. They also had months, but they were always 30 days. So these are some things that explain what the technology of calendars were like in the past. And I have listed out more than one thing. You may have one, you may have more than one thing to talk about. You decide based off of what your research is. So let's move on to the next piece that needs to be in this paragraph. So next, we're going to start talking about details. Details tell us more about this main idea. So what was your technology like in the past? Well, who invented it? That has to do with our technology in the past. So we're going to talk about who invented it. Now for me, mine had a lot of information here. Yours may only have one piece of information. It was invented by Alexander Graham Bell. That would be a pretty simple detail. Mine is a little more complex, so you're going to notice my sentence being a little bit longer than yours might end up being, and that's okay. So mine says, calendars are thought to be first used by ancient people in Central America, Egypt, and Assyria. Julius Caesar of ancient Rome invented the calendar that we use today. So there really is no one person who invented the calendar, is what I learned from my research. They were actually invented by multiple cultures all over the world. But Julius Caesar is the main inventor of the calendar that we use today. So I included both of those pieces. So do what works and what matches your research and your learning about your topic. So next, what else can I talk about for what my technology was like in the past? So who invented it is the first detail, and another detail was when was it invented. Again, this tells us more about my technology in the past, when it was invented. So now I'm going to make a sentence talking about when it was invented. And again, since we don't know who invented it, we also don't know exactly when it was invented. So you're going to notice my sentence a little bit longer than yours might end up being. No one really knows when the first calendar was invented, but we do know that they have been around as long as civilization. So I try to make sure I include as much information as possible. So even if you know that your technology was invented in 1892, you still can say more than it was invented in 1892. And this kind of helps you think about that. Talk about it like you would be talking about it with someone, a friend or another person. So the last detail is why was it invented and what problem did it solve? So this talks about what was going on in the past that made people think that they needed this. So the calendar was invented to help people keep track of time in uniform ways. This is a great example of a very simple answer and therefore just one sentence simply stating that fact, which you might end up having to do throughout your writing. So here we're going to take one more look at all of it put together, and I want you to listen to how it flows and make sure that you always reread your writing to make sure that it flows, it sounds good, and make sure that you've discussed everything that you need to make sure that you have a complete paragraph. Calendars have seen many changes over the years, but some things aren't that different. They all had weeks, but some weeks were 4 days long and others were 8 days long. They also had months, but they were always 30 days. Calendars are thought to be first used by ancient people in Central America, Egypt, and Assyria. Julius Caesar of ancient Rome invented the calendar that we use today. No one really knows when the first calendar was invented, but we do know that they have been around since as long as civilization. The calendar was invented to help people keep track of time in uniform ways. So this is a great example of what your paragraph should look like today. Good luck.